Hi, everyone. It is the 29th of August, 2019, and I am here with my friend David Manning. We were going to go live, but there was some technical issues, and so we're going to push this here as soon as we finish it. But today I'd like to welcome David Manning. We're talking about choice points, the expansion of the field, timelines collapsing, and more. Welcome.
Yeah, whatever else comes up. Huh?
Right? Well, you and it was like I was having to say as we were setting up, stop talking, David, let's record that. That was all really good stuff. As a matter of fact, David, right, our whole last conversation a week ago, we were like, why didn't we record that? Why didn't we broadcast that? So that's what we're doing today for the rest of you out there. So welcome, David.
Oh, thank you, Candace. It's always a real pleasure to connect with you, and our conversations, we spark each other into some really interesting insights and dialogues, and yeah, hopefully this will be useful for some folks to listen to, huh?
Absolutely. I look forward to hearing more about some of the things you've written about, and particularly in your last two newsletters. But before we even get going on that, I would like to point out that I'm in a new place here. I'm in a tiny little room in my home. It's no bigger than a closet, really. I've got the camera and a light positioned perfectly, but this is basically a great big closet where I'm now setting up to begin painting again in my life. And when David and I were talking about that, he was like, well, I've been painting. So I have a painting behind me, actually a couple and a photograph I think is on the floor, and David has a painting of his own behind him, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But one of the things we wanted to talk about, right, David, was how we're all coming to some of the same conclusions about what is happening right here, right now with humanity on Earth, right?
Yeah, and this creative impulse, I think, is truly wanting to be born. Now we are, in effect, creation itself, embodied, in physical form, but there is this extraordinary upwelling of the creative impulse as our deep connectedness to the earth, it's not even into the earth, but to the earth, is being don't even know the right words for it, rewoven, remembered, rekindled. And this is what I'm seeing a lot when I'm working one-to-one. And I'm being encouraged and have been all year long to spend time just lying on the earth, literally giving my body to the earth. And there was this beautiful insight that arose of how we have taken ownership of our body. We take ownership of everything we claim as our own. None of it belongs to us, nothing. Anything in physical form actually belongs to the earth, but we say, it's mine, whether it's the body, it's the house, the car, whatever. And it all returns to the earth when we're done with it. It has a lifespan and goes back to the earth. It's a really useful, beautiful, and deeply relaxing thing to just give up ownership of your body and hand it back to the earth. That automatically gives the earth energy more access to your system, which is deeply, deeply healing for the physical body. It relaxes because we recognize then I'm not having to care for this thing all on my own. The earth and the nature spirits will always have a lovely input into caring for our physical system if we allow them. But as soon as we claim ownership and say something is mine, we ring fence it, literally energetically. We create a tight field around it that sort of deflects the support that is naturally available, if that makes sense. I didn't even mean to go into that direction at all, but it's a useful place to start from, I think.
I love what you're saying. I love the way you actually started it by saying you lie on the earth, because what I've been doing myself for a while, but with more commitment, is following my intuition completely, not trying to talk myself out of my intuitive hits, as many of us do a lot. And one of them is doing exactly what you're saying. So, most people know I live on a farm and I've got animals. And lately I have done exactly physically what you just said, which is lie on the earth. So I may be headed toward the barn, or I may go out to the chicken coop, and I will suddenly just sit down and just go on the ground. And my dogs think that's great. They'll just be all over my face and go, "Hey, you're down here with us." Anyway, I've been doing that, but you know what? I'm not the only one. A friend of mine, a Facebook friend actually, was just recently, she was like, "Yeah, I just felt like laying on the driveway." And I'm like, this is what I love. This is what I love, that so many of us are having these things that seem kind of spontaneous and maybe deeply personal, but it's a lot of us who are feeling some of these impulses and urges, right?
Yeah, and that's the way the collective field works. We are coming back into collectivity or collective connectivity, in a sense, where we have individualized ourselves so much and so intensely. And that's been a really important part of our journey for thousands of years, to gain an individual identity. What's happening now is we're recognizing the power of the collective field. And I truly believe, because I witness this on my teleconferences, I get to see how much power there is and how much extraordinary support there is from other dimensions, from other realms, from star family, from the nature spirits, the angelic realms, all sorts of different dimensions of beings. There's huge support that meets us in these collective fields, because there's extraordinary work for us to be engaged in. But this sense of collective connectivity is an important piece of our moving forward, because I think it's going to be really significant in terms of how we take back the earth, as it were, how we claim back power from, whatever it is, the elite or whatever you want to call it, and bring it back, how we start to create the changes, create the new earth that is unfolding moment by moment now, as the old world is dying.
David, there's a concept that I think about a lot, being a fiercely rebellious individual, and an American. I often wonder about that individual perspective as we are approaching and moving towards exactly what you're talking about, connectivity and the collective and everything. But sometimes I think the individual perspective, the being authentic to your own individual drives and impulses, sometimes gets lost a little bit in this we are all one kind of sometimes conversation that to many almost kind of smacks of losing your rights, or losing the opportunity to be creative or whatever. How do you resolve thinking about the collective and connecting, and then yet keeping your authentic powerful self within?
Yeah. It's a good question, isn't it? Because I think certainly I think it's true for many of us, we have spent lifetimes winning our individuality, separating from the tribe and finding out who it is I am. And that's an important piece of our process that has been both individual but also collective. We have needed to do this. I think what's happening now is the coming back into the sea of oneness, but with all of that individuation as a really enriching aspect to oneness. So it can feel threatening to individuality, to recognize that the individual, and this is I've been made aware of this for years now, that the personality of David is a complete work of fiction. He doesn't exist at all. It's just a layer that has been crafted over perhaps many lifetimes, mostly of wounding. And as that becomes how I see it, is like this very, very thin veneer of the personality structure that we're trapped into, that we're focused into, and there's this extraordinary depth that is the ocean of what we actually are. Now we're starting to recognize, oh, I'm that, the thin veneer, but I'm also all of this depth. And all of this depth will always, whilst we're in this world and in a body, will focus itself through the veneer of personality. So everything has its own totally unique flavor and color and likes and dislikes. All of the people I've met that have claimed to be enlightened have very, very strong personalities. They have not been bland or uninteresting individuals at all. I'm not all that sure about enlightenment either, but it seems to strengthen and enhance the uniqueness of the individual, whilst coming from that place of beautiful recognition of our shared humanity, our shared universality. But I think the threat of losing individuality is something that each of us has to work through, because it's a valid and natural part of the journey that has to be moved through.
And the political situation across the globe doesn't help that very much, does it? I know David was like, oh my God, we don't know if we want to go there, maybe in general terms, but seeing some of what is happening and some of the deep responses that we are all having to some of this justice and not wanting to be absorbed by the Borg or whatever other things are going on.
How do you deal with it from your perspective then? What do you do?
Oh my gosh, I can see, and you and I were talking about this before we pressed record. It's so easy to get caught up. It's so easy to get caught up and want to have a strong, visceral, and immediate reaction. And if and when it's in my face, I don't know. But when I feel that start to bubble up inside of me, I know that it's time to do like what you've just said, is, recognize that maybe it's the veneer of what you've just spoken about that's reacting here. And there's a much deeper, oh gosh, the hairs are coming up on my arm. There's a much deeper way of looking at all of this that my reaction might just kind of drown out if it's too loud, right? So I recognize in myself to sort of back off, take a breath, and try to look at it with more of the depth that we have access to. How about you?
It's something that I'm struggling with at the moment, literally because of what has happened in our political arena in the UK over literally the past 24 hours. And I woke up this morning and I was just raging about what seems like a very deep threat to democracy in this country. We have an unelected monarch giving permission to an unelected prime minister to close down the elected parliament. And it just seems deeply, deeply unfair. And as I meditate on it, I can feel this extraordinary well of unfairness that I think is not just about this lifetime. This sort of unfair grabbing of power has gone on and on and on, and I have no doubt that I have been a part of that in other times. What I am always told is that this is the old world and it's dying, so let it die, and that I and many others now are here to give birth and to witness and to support the rising of the new world. And that is beautiful, and I attempt as much as I can to give myself to that. And then sometimes something happens and it flips me out, And so I acknowledge that too, because I'm human and I care. And sometimes I think I should be there with a placard outside the House of Parliament, shouting. And yet I also know that that isn't what I want to give energy to. That's not the world I want to support. It's exhausting and it's it's a no-win situation, I think. And I know that my expertise is in matters of energy, not in matters of politics. I couldn't argue my way out of a paper bag, with a politician, but I can talk about energy in a way that works for me. So I get triggered though, and it's useful for me to follow the triggers internally to allow those externals to take me deeper inside to find what it is that is calling for resolution in me. And as I do that, I know that I gain a deeper sense of peace. It doesn't feel like it today, but it will, it will, as I keep doing that and healing that sense of injustice and unfairness in my little part of the collective field, then I know that has an impact.
I think as more and more people are sensing everything that we're talking about today, this creation of the next new way will become more possible. Watching what's going on in China and in France and just everywhere. I tell my own clients, the way I understand it is we won lottery tickets to be here on boots on the ground for the changes that are happening on the planet right now. It's such a small sliver of human history time. Yeah. And, we got the golden ticket to be here. So if you can come at it at that perspective and then really understand or begin to at least ask the question, what is my purpose here? You and I may have been working on that for a while, and it may be more clear to us than maybe some of our viewers or listeners. But, I know that some of what, my purpose here is to support others who are doing this the same way, to support other healers, other way showers, and to allow that to support them. And I just love the symbology here, because I love to support them as a group, and I'm fiercely protective of their individual way of choosing how they want to provide that support, right? So it is all of that. I'm always thinking about the collaboration and the horizontal learning and all of that, and yet each particular choice, each particular person has the ability to figure out how they fit into all of that. And it does not have to be one way or the other. I just don't think so. And that's how I run my life, how I run my business. And I think I'm seeing more of that in the world. Are you?
Yeah, I think so. And it is useful for me to remember that whilst my calling seems to be to work almost exclusively in the energetic realms, there may be people listening to this whose destiny is to work in the political arena or the environmental arena, or with starvation in third world countries or first world countries, because it's happening here too. And if that is your deepest calling, then go to it, answer that, because that's where you'll get your deepest inner rewards, your deepest learning, your deepest fulfillment. So it is different for everybody, and there is no set answer to this other than turn inwards and listen deeply to the voice of your intuition, the voice of your higher self. And of course, the more crazy things become externally, that can be trickier to do, because our attention is pulled outwards by the news and social media and all of those very, very addictive outlets that we have. So it's important to give ourselves the time and the space just to ground deeply into that, those inner resources that are becoming much, much more available all the time. They're much more freely available, much more easily available all the time. And you've been experiencing this just lately, that there's another wave of capacities and capabilities coming online. Do you want to talk a bit about that, how that's showed up for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's some construction work going on outside of my window too. So if I quickly pass it off to you, it's because I'm putting myself on mute so that we can both continue to still speak. But yeah, so for me, it's one of the reasons we decided to, I had David bring his painting and put it behind him and mine behind me, because I did a video recently where stepping into a couple of art museums became, it was almost like stepping into a movie theater and experiencing this, I don't know, kind of a psychic drama movie. I'm sensitive. I pick up on things, as many of us do, but it just got turned up, and the volume, got turned up so far that for me, spending a day in the city of Kansas City, actually Kansas City, Missouri, going to a couple of museums and being in the realm of artwork, and then also with other people, but suddenly a whole lot was available to me. But I would be standing in front of a painting, and there would be these flashes coming through of the person standing in front of the painting who was drinking a cup of coffee and smoking a cigarette. I could even smell like they're right outside the door. Smell the Chinese, takeout that's on the other end of their work table, that's mingling with some of the art smells, and just flashes of it. Now that's happened to me throughout my life, but not in the consistent way that my day was, my whole day was. And as I'm feeling so grateful for this gift of these beautiful flashes of incredible, deep and specific intuition, whereas normally it's more generalized than that for me, I'm starting to ask myself, why? Why am I feeling all of that? Why am I feeling all of that so specifically today? And for me, the answer that I came up with was kind of twofold. Number one, the energies, the coming out of the Lion's Gate, the closing of that and moving into this new next place that we're going, this new moon, this new portal, but it became very, very clear to me that I missed this world, that I need this in my life, and that I was quickly running out of an opportunity to do something very concrete, to lock myself in the timeline that will allow me to get my hands back into the paint so that I can produce a little bit more visual art, in this lifetime that I've chosen. It was very clear to me. It's the last day to choose. The last day to choose. And we've been prompting you, and I've pushed away the prompts, right? But that day, it was very, very clear to me that the timelines were collapsing, and and for me, at least, the art part of it, the choice needed to be that right now. But the two things that have been communicated back to me as I'm sharing this, number one is how many of us energy workers or people who are awakened have a creative side, have set aside their painting or their pottery or their quilt making or whatever to take care of 3D lives, and how they've felt called to that fairly recently, and some of them have gone, I've just started this again, or I've really been meaning to, and I've gotten some very poignant communication from people who are like, I've been thinking about it, and it wasn't until your video that I realized I just need to do that too. So it's been very gratifying to set up my little studio here. You and I even had the conversation, right? You were like, I painted this, and then I painted this, and it's exciting to step into a new chapter, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm stopping any of those other things that I'm doing. I'm just making sure that I'm keeping a space in my house, in my energy field, and in my life for image making, because I love it so much.
That's great. And my understanding is that there are literally dimensions of us coming online that perhaps have been closed down sometimes for lifetimes. What I was witnessing was literally that we were opening up dimensions that we closed down at the end of the Atlantean timeline, and we're now starting to open those up again. And so there are literally more capacities coming online, and our artistic and creative impulses are clues into those timelines, or emerge directly from those timelines, and can help to anchor us back into those fields. So yeah, I think it's a really important pastime now to give yourself time to create. And it might, it might not be to create for something or somebody, but just for yourself, to take the time to doodle or write a bit of poetry, or just journaling even, or go out and arrange plants in your garden, or whatever it is, pebbles on the beach, just something that is seemingly of no consequence, but can allow the energy field to format itself in a different way. And that's important now, that we try different things, because and this is really important, I was watching and was bumped onto a new timeline just a couple of days before the Lion's Gate, and I wrote about this, but it was a powerful experience for me. And it was made clear to me that if you step onto a new timeline, or you invite a new timeline, you have to do things different.
Yes.
You can't take all of your old shit from your old life onto the new timeline and expect to have a different experience. You've got to start living on that timeline some of the stuff that you've been dreaming about opening up for ages. And perhaps not all of it, a couple of things, just to really initiate the timeline and to get it going, because we have to take responsibility for what it is we want to create, and this is something I'm seeing a lot now, that I've been given the opportunity of the past few years on a regular basis by my off-planetary team to design my life for the next 6 months or so. There's a regular meeting, if you like, where I'm asked, okay, what is it you want in the next period of your life? And now I think we really get to open up those gates, in a much bigger way, and much more people are. It's not about learning to manifest. We just recognize that manifestation happens as a result of what we are. It's natural, it's innate for us. And we've been disconnected from many of these things for a long time, believing them to be out of reach and only in the hands of the priests and whatever. We are those priests. We are those shamans. We are those star beings. We are those angelic beings. That's what we are, as a natural, deep part of our DNA, and all of those are timelines and dimensions that are opening up to us now. So it really is time to play and explore. And that seems crazy when we're faced with the apparent chaos of the world, to even think about playing and having fun and exploring. But it's vitally important, because those are the timelines, those are the energies that we're anchoring for the new earth, the new world that is opening.
Yeah, this concept of play is so important. And we can do much of this all on our own. It's not like you have to go display anything. If somebody out there is keen on painting, it doesn't mean you have to do what David and I are doing, which is, showing what our things to the world. But what occurs to me is something that I've noticed, this trend, and which is why so many of us on the planet are saying just no more, which is, even when you and I were children, we would have more outside time and there was a lot more natural play going on than what's going on in our world right now. And in the education system, what I'm seeing is they've just been shaving off anything that could be considered frivolous. Well, you can have music once every third Thursday. You can have an art class for 15 minutes here or there. But the rest of the time, it's like, well, we want you to have these skills so that you can fit into your cubicle very nicely and keep the machine running, right?
Mhm.
Which is why I think some of that's one of the reasons why homeschooling has taken a big hold, and some people are like, oh, wait a second here. But in a bigger way, even it's been this thing for adults, right? Adults crave and need playing. We've been kind of conditioned and programmed that, well, now you're an adult, stop messing around, get your head out of the clouds and stop doing that. But even like adult coloring books and some other things have kind of exploded because we need that, exactly what you're talking about, the authentic, natural sense of play has been, it's been programmed out of us, and to our detriment. I think, your life force kind of, insists on a little bit of that. And I love what you've said about taking action, because sometimes people think all that's really necessary maybe is to meditate and sort of, ask your team and angels, I want my life to be different this way or whatever, and then sit back and sort of wait for it to be handed to them on a silver platter. And actually, I think what you were saying, and I'm in total agreement, you need to be more proactive than that. I mean, one of the ways that, with all of this input that I had with, at least get your hands back into painting, make the choice that you're going to make room for that in your life. Well, I did that in a big way with my credit card. And I bought I had some new brushes, and I have, that's a new beautiful easel. I had the one that I bought in 1980. Oh gosh. I had this big old pine one that was falling apart, and I still had it somewhere, but it was way too big for this tiny room. And so I like splurged and I did all this, and the utter joy that I felt by doing some of this, just pulling that credit card out and go ahead. But it really felt like a committed stake, right? Yes, I will be doing some of this. It's not just a pipe dream. It's not just an idea. Like you were saying earlier, I'm stepping onto that timeline, and I really sense it. Did we say this before? Maybe it was in our talk before. I really feel like it's another ocean analogy. It's like one foot's on the dock and one foot's on the boat. And we've been that way for a long time, with the boat just right there. And you've been able to have a foot on both. But it's kind of time to make a decisive choice about.
The boat is pushing away from the dock, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for you in terms of, I've known you a few years now, I guess, and we've had quite a few conversations and stuff, but I didn't know that you had trained, you'd been to art school and had spent years training your artistic abilities. And what I just understood was that because it's like picking up an old timeline that got closed down slightly or that petered out. And it's actually, when we do something like that, it actually rejuvenates us. Yeah. Because you're opening up a timeline right back into your 20-year-old self and bringing that energy back online. So it literally revitalizes and rejuvenates us.
In such a huge way, David. You do not know how appropriate what you've just said was. I'm an early riser. I get up at sometimes 5, sometimes 6 o'clock every day. So I'm pretty much, I'm done for the night, 9, 10, 10:30 or whatever.
You're one of the busiest people I know. I mean, really.
I know. Well, that was the internal me going, what do you mean? You don't have any time for that. And, and I didn't want to argue with it. But you know what I did last night? I stayed up till, I think it was 1:30 in the morning, just like putting stuff together, grabbing stuff, and looking at what some of the rest of the art world is doing right now. And of course, back when I was first doing this, if you weren't near an art center or a community or one of the, you didn't have a choice about that. You either had to go there to be a part of, the larger community of artists, or you were working alone in seclusion. And I chose to sort of just set it aside and take it to photography and design in my healing career. But Now with the internet, the ability to see what's going on in the rest of the world and to be able to connect with others and learn or exchange ideas, that wasn't available to me when I was actively producing paintings. And so, yeah, I'm like, I only slept like 4.5 hours last night. And the whole time I'm laying there, I'm thinking about everything I need to do today. And I'm like, you've got to go to sleep. You need your sleep. And then there's a part of me that was really saying, are you tired? No, and it's exactly what you said. I'm so energized and excited about the possibilities, the creativity, and happily, like a friend, rejoicing in the return of this part of me that has come back online, and coming, other abilities coming online. One of the things I make every one of your teleconferences that I possibly can, David. And one of the things that has been extraordinary for me to listen to is your description of the expansion and the spiraling up and the increasing awareness of just how big of a field you have the ability to tap into when you gather people for some of your events. Would you talk about that?
That's an interesting one. I wanted to ask you to talk about the painting behind you, and maybe
we can do that too. But
okay, good, because I'll talk about this thing because I haven't done any art training. This is just a copy because I love Jackson Pollock's work, and I thought, oh, I'll have a go at doing one of those, and it was just good fun. I have no art training and nothing original about it, but it was just good fun.
And do you see that it's the same colors we've used?
Yes, it is. It's a lot of the same colors. What interests me is what I'm seeing in that painting as you're talking, and we can talk about that.
Oh, I love that.
It looks like a dimensional field, the painting that, does that have a title, your painting?
Well, it has a here, let me just let you see it. So yeah, there's a little bit more at the top, but not much. It kind of goes, it's called Blue Stripe. And I didn't give it, portal to another dimension or anything like that. I made very descriptive things. Some of what all of this is field painting, is other dimensional painting.
Totally.
But I didn't have the vocabulary or even the understanding of the context of it till I got into the quantum healing and started doing all of that, right? So
what age would you have been when you created that?
That was done I think that was done, it was in Pennsylvania, so 1995, 6-ish, they're right around in there. Yeah.
24 years ago.
Yeah, a while. So, I didn't have language to talk about any of this, but so much of what this is what we've been talking about, right? The individual part coming into a whole, which is
within worlds, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Totally. Yeah. Beautiful.
And what I want to say to you about your painting a little bit is, first off, I adore it, right? And it's copy or no. First off, you didn't copy splash by splash the Jackson Pollock. That would have been laborious, and it would have looked like
it would have been boring. It would have been boring.
Right? So there's nothing boring about your painting, even though you're calling it a copy. It's completely authentic. You borrowed his style, but you know what else you borrowed? You stepped into his energy, and you borrowed his movement and his approach. And that's a beautiful painting. It's naturally vibrant. It is not a stilted, boring copy of something that, at all. It's beautiful. I love it very much.
I tell you something I did was I meditated with the colors. And I invited the angels of color to embody themselves into the paints, and then also invited the colors to choose themselves, to direct me as to how, so I sort of, and I spent, it was a meditative process,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed it. And I took 6 or 8 hours one evening to do that. So, and I was standing on ladders and dropping paint from above, and it was great fun. It was really great fun, but it was an extraordinarily energizing thing to do. And it's the same for me if I get out of my own way and sit down and write something. I'm energized by the process, and this I think is a really important aspect of creativity, that literally it does open up streams of energy for us. And I want to mention this. This year has been a really interesting year, and I've been through a second experience of cancer. And the temptation when we are unwell is to close things down, to go into a protectionist mode. I've got to save my energy. I've got to, and my guidance was, no, don't do that. Just keep opening up. Recognize your limitations, honor the body and its needs, but don't fall into the trap of closing things down. So I would be down on the beach most days. I worked right the way through, and it was really important for me to keep opening new fields of energy, because that very natural temptation to close down literally cuts off vital life-giving energy that our system is wanting.
Right.
And our whole medical system, in a sense, encourages us into the world of illness and disability, when actually there's a tiny part of the body maybe is experiencing difficulty or challenge. Most of me was very, very well. Just a tiny part that was experiencing unruly growth in cell tissue that could have gone on to cause complications. It still could. I don't know where I'm at with that yet. But it was a really, really interesting experience, this whole thing of keeping those fields and those streams of energy wide open so that I didn't collapse into victimhood. Not too much. I did, of course, and it's always a useful experience in terms of taking a deeper into your own process. But it's the same thing as creativity. Well, it's all, life is just creativity in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah. I think, you beautifully describe right now flow, being in the flow. And I said something, David, my entire life, I've, from the time I was 8 years old, when I got my first horse, believe it or not, I used to say, even when I was young, I waited years and years and years for that horse. I did. I swear to God, I felt like I did, right? I waited years. I was 8. And then from about the age of 12 to 15, I was horseless and miserable. And then I was a young mother later on, and there was no ability to have horses for a while. And when my children started school, I allowed myself to get back into riding, and it was so, I was experiencing some physical issues even back then. I had 2 bedridden pregnancies. There were still some things going on with me that were unresolved. Wow, getting on the back of a horse was so healing for me. I was outside, I was on this horse. The horse, I was grounded, because when a horse touches the ground and you're touching the horse, you spend hours being grounded electrically and your body. And after a little while, when I was starting to feel so much better, I started to tell people, I knew I missed horses, but I didn't know that I was in some way becoming ill without them, or without their participation in my vitality and my health. I've told that story for years, ever since I was a young mother. I mean, it's sort of, part and parcel of how I talk about health and energy and all that. But guess what I didn't know? I didn't know I was doing this with art. Like that I had, I didn't, what? Oh yeah, I forgot how good it makes me feel. So I was closing off my flow there. And I just have a lot of things flowing. I've got, like you, all right, I've got writings, I've got the horses, I've got painting, I've got my sessions, I've got my teaching, I've got my support of the other communities. And part of me wants to go, oh my God, how can I do all of that? And then part of me goes, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Just get up every day and don't think too far ahead of the future, forward. Just take everything as it comes and you can do it.
And the container of what we are is being expanded all the time. And we have to participate in that expansion by pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits, and in some ways that's it, isn't it? You can do more than we ever think we're capable of. We can fit more in, and time isn't a real thing. It's flexible and fluid, I think. So we can create more time for ourselves. I bet you've had those experiences where time has expanded itself to fit your needs, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, even last night, it's like, the very logical 3D part of me was giving myself a lecture about how, how I really needed my sleep. And then the other part of me that was more in tune with, how about just moment to moment stuff? How are you feeling right now? Well, I feel wonderful. Well, then get up and do something else. Just lay here and try to go to sleep. So I did. And once again, back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm trying to follow the energetic voice that's, what is your passion at this moment? What feels right to do right now? I've got I don't know if you know this gal, her name's Zenda Brooke. She's an amazing woman who, she teaches something called your internal guidance system, your IGS. She's an amazing woman. And she talks about really listening to this internal guidance system right here, that it's never wrong. If you can just hear it clearly without the programming, and that's not always easy to do, not even for those of us who teach this stuff, because programming is deep and
yes, sometimes.
Oh gosh, yeah. So, but if you can tap into that, some people call it the voice of the intuition, Zen calls it the internal guidance system. It will never steer you wrong, and it's always the right thing to do. And one of the latest stories she told me, it's not even my own story, but it's such a great story. She had an opportunity for this really big project. And the project was, it was big, and there was a lot of people involved, and it was, there was a lot of investment involved. And there were, it wasn't a small little thing. It was a big thing. She had a number of weeks to work on it. The deadline was approaching. She just kept checking in about starting and what to do, checking in, finding that she's getting down to like not, 2 days before the whole thing is even kind of due. But she so strongly believes in her internal guidance system. And she comes back with the story that, like, the people come back to her and go, hey, how's that project going? And she starts off with, I'm almost kind of embarrassed to tell you I haven't done anything yet. Even her, she's coming up with the 3D thing of like, I haven't started on it yet, and they come back and say, that's great, because guess what? We're changing everything. We're doing this now. And anything she would have done all those months and weeks. And I mean, how brilliant of a story is that?
Yeah. And I know that shows up for me in terms of, I give myself a hard time. I should have done this by now. I should have got this sorted. I should have written this piece and had it out there as publicity. And sometimes I just can't bring myself to sit at the computer and write. I just can't do it. Or I try and I'm sitting there for ages and I'm fiddling around and nothing much is happening. And then all of a sudden I'll wake up and it's done in 5 minutes. It just happens. And then it goes out, and I understand in that moment that it couldn't have been written at any other time. It wasn't appropriate.
Exactly.
I'm still not trusting. I still give myself a hard time for not having done things done sooner, but I'm trusting more that there is a right time for things to happen. And that's part of the magic, I think, isn't it? You know, there are all sorts of unseen factors that my intellect can't possibly know about. But the bigger field knows exactly what's going on and knows when to download the stream of creativity that produces whatever it is, a newsletter in my case, in the perfect timing. It's mind-blowing sometimes.
I'm not able to show this painting to you right now. It's too big and too far away, but this reminds me of dreams that I used to have that I believe are coming back online for me now too. So I would dream that I would go into an art museum, or sometimes into, we used to call them head shops. Do they still call them head shops? Where there's like
bones and things for sale, yeah.
Yeah, we call them head shops because there was all that there, but there was T-shirts, and for me there was posters, rock and roll, and different kinds of posters. So I always have this image of we call them head shops, but when you go to a place where there's posters and you can flip through them like that, they're great big things, but you can just flip through and look. So I would have, when I was painting in my painting years, I would go sit in these in my dreams in these head shops, and I would flip through and I would look at all of these paintings, and then I would see one and I would go, oh, and I would go, oh my gosh, I love that. I wish I would have painted that. And then I'll wake up and I'll go, cool, because that's my painting, right? I did paint it. It was in my dream. I saw it, and it's that kind of thing. It's done. It's all I have to do now is just get it out. There's no trauma. It's just exuberant, passionate, amazing, watching it come out. And I was doing some of that like on purpose last night. So this is, sure, we all struggle, and there are things that we will still struggle, and there's still pieces of this, but when you can get it like that, that's real flow, and that's really being tapped in to that bigger collective, right? Where we actually use our physical bodies in the way they were intended, which is to manifest and create in physicality in concert with the thing that propels us, right? And not all on its own as a struggle without that support.
I think we are truly leaving behind the identity of seclusion and aloneness. The separation, that's the word I was looking for. The identity of separation. We are no longer separate. And this is happening at an individual level and the collective and the planetary level. I think literally our planet has been in a quarantine zone, and that quarantine is being lifted now as we expand our idea and our understanding of ourselves out, and we reach out towards the stars, not just as a scientific, rocket space exploration, but literally remembering our genetic heritage, which is universal, that the genetics that have formulated the fabric of our being have come from star systems all over this universe, and maybe from beyond, and that's what we are. And that is awakening deep inside us, and also then expanding our field, or expanding our integration into our vaster field, so that we become or remember ourselves as universal beings.
Yeah.
And that's often, I have that experience when I'm holding a teleconference or I'm doing some one-to-one work, is that I let go of the physical body, the manifestation of David, and experience myself as universal. And that's extraordinary. That's beautiful. There was a time, or times, when I've had the sun in one hand out here and the earth in another, and I'm just streaming energy through this system, as a connecting device. And I'm experiencing it, questioning it, thinking this is completely crazy, but also feeling it and knowing it as truth.
And really feeling it coming through you.
Yeah. And that's not, I'm not claiming anything special for myself. I think that's just what we are. We are universal in our vastness, and we have elected to experience this tiny, tiny field of density, the personality on this planet. And now we are remembering the vastness again. And so the layers of density are crumbling in the face of the expansion, this extraordinary expansion that's opening up internally and externally. It's no wonder it's a chaotic time that we're in, huh?
It is, yeah, chaos. Yeah, but you need some chaos. You need to. It just is. Yeah, we need it. You know, if it wasn't chaotic, it wouldn't all get swept away, which needs to happen so that we can start over. You can't build a new house on a crumbling foundation. You just can't do it. You're stupid if you try. That's why a lot of this, well, we need to fix it this way, or we need to fix it this way or this other way. Some of that is, you know, not the way to go energetically anyway. You know, it may seem more practical or whatever, but I think it needs to just
a lot of it just needs to die. And we're in a big cleansing process. Now, I had, some years ago, I woke up hearing the words, we are in the winnowing time. And I was like, what does that word mean? And I thought I knew what that word meant, but I had to go to the dictionary to make sure. And the winnowing is that sorting of the wheat from the chaff. Last week, or the week before, a couple of weeks ago, I think, I was at a place in London called the College of Psychic Studies. They were having an art exhibition of what they called spirit art. So art that had been channeled or inspired, you know, whatever.
Of course you were there doing this.
The painting that struck me the most was the sorting of the wheat from the tars, the wheat from the chaff. Yeah. And it was a pen and ink drawing, which I need to get an image of. And I was transfixed by this. And then the next day I had this experience, which I wrote about in the waiting room, the oncology waiting room, where I became very, very aware that I was literally occupying a different dimension than most of the other people in that waiting room. And that, excuse me, to attempt to, the energy in that waiting room was becoming thick and very, very turgid. And so I thought, oh, I'll clear the energy of didn't mean to clear the energy of individuals, just the energy of the space. And I was told, no, don't. Leave these people to the consequence of their choices. They are happy with their choices. And happy was in a sort of inverted commas. They are happy with their choices. And for me to impose my energetic reality upon them would have been disturbing for them. And it was just, okay, I have to sit in my own field and create my own reality, which is quite easy to do, and not be impinged upon by their energetic reality. And
yeah, because you never know what their soul choices are, right? Their soul choices may have some mission that needs accomplishing that any sort of requested help might interfere with.
And it's nightmarish for, well, it's that old analogy, isn't it, that you can't put a 5-year-old into a senior school's educational program because it just doesn't work. And it's not that I'm saying I'm more advanced than they are, but there is this recognition that not everybody has incarnated this time to ascend or to raise their frequency. That's not everybody's program.
You know, I love that you're bringing that up, because that's something else to think about when people get so hell-bent into trying to like change somebody's opinion to something else. Can't you see that this is the right way and what you're saying is the wrong way and stuff like that? I think what's useful to remember is that some of these people literally are taking on that role so that you can figure out where you stand in all of this. That's the role that they are playing.
Yeah.
And it is not up to you to change their role. It's up to you to work on you and what's going on with you. And they need to be left to do their thing too, you know.
Totally, totally. We've all got our very individual path, and there are many millions of us now that are choosing to awaken. But there are many that aren't going to do it this time around, and that's totally, totally okay, you know. And yeah.
So,
Quite
David,
simple.
tell us about what's going on. It's fine. Tell us what's going on with your event coming up.
I've got, now this is something else, that another strand that keeps, it's a recurring theme then. When I get distressed about the state of politics or what's happening in the environment, and those are my major triggers in effect, what I am told, and I have what I've always been told ever since I started on this consciousness exploration or exploration of consciousness, is for me that the heart is the most important field of energy for me to explore, for me to immerse myself in. So it's always come back to your heart, come back to your heart. And as soon as I do that, is that, oh yeah, because everything in that place is okay. And it's the weirdest thing. And it was, again, this experience that I've been through this year was terrifically grounding in that field, because whatever was going on, and there were intense experiences with treatment and, you know, the usual sorts of very human emotions around a life-threatening illness. And it was always bring it to your heart, drop it into your heart, breathe through the heart, expand the field of it. It was always a version of that. And of course, it makes everything so much better. So this weekend, I've got a two-part intensive, a 2-hour teleconference on Saturday, a 2-hour teleconference on Sunday, 5 o'clock UK time, that's midday East Coast and 9 a.m. West Coast, both days, which is just a very deep exploration of the heart, not so much from the perspective of the limited, wounded human heart, but this much bigger version of the heart that I have been experiencing for some years now, but is sort of pushing us to receive it. And it's that analogy I used before, the thin veneer of the personality, where we tend to be locked into, in a blinkered sort of way, this is what I am, when we're missing the fact that there is this vast, vast oceanic depth to our reality that is now begging, well, no, it's not begging, but it's longing to be included in our awareness, or as our awareness. It isn't in our awareness, it is our awareness, you know. And so this, one of the easiest ways to access this is through what I would term the universal heart, and it's simplicity itself. But it is, from my perspective, the field of energy that most needs to be anchored on the planet. Everything else has a much, much easier ride if we open those frequencies. It's like universal lubricant. It just allows everything, whatever needs to flow out of your field and fall away, does so much easier if the heart is open, and whatever needs to land can land much easier if the heart is open. It just creates a field of smoothness for the individual. But imagine if millions of us were doing that at the same time, what an impact it could have for the planet. So recently I've become aware in the teleconferences that I do, that the field of energy we create becomes, it gets woven as a template, a beautiful template of possibility that is then offered like a program to the collective field, inserted into the collective field to say, here, there's this option, you could try this option. This might make it easier. And that's what we do. And so that's what I'm offering this weekend. It's called It's called the heart field, originally enough. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really rich exploration. And it's going to be a lot of fun too, but it'll be powerful.
Hey, that's great. You know, David, I'm going to have to run, but I love the way that we kind of came to this part, because guess what I want to do? I want to pick up my computer and show you another painting. I wasn't going to do this till you just told me the name of your conference, the Heart Field, because this is another painting of mine where I did a series of hearts. So I'm gonna show you this. It's kind of a colloquial painting of hearts. So I want to show this to you, but let's see if I can move this. Let's follow me out this way, and then we'll say goodbye to our viewers for today. But we'll definitely do it again. If you could.
We've chatted for over an hour, Candace.
Oh, I know we did. We really did. So I'm out of my little closet room, and there's.
I've been out of the closet for a while now. That's lovely. And that looks like apples to me, to apple cores, you know, but that's beautiful, isn't it?
It's definitely the insides of hearts, right?
Yeah, that's lovely. That's really lovely. And you can see, I mean, you can see that you have a depth of training there that is beautiful, that allows them freedom, doesn't it? It allows freedom. Once you know the rules, you can go and break them, but it's beautiful. Beautiful. I think I can really see an exhibition coming, huh?
Yeah, well, here, I want to get away from, here's kind of another one, but I just wanted to get away from my messy bookcase. Thank you, David, for spending some time with me today. It was wonderful.
Oh, it's always lovely to connect with you, Candace. It really is.
We'll link below a link to David's teleconference that's coming on this weekend. And when I get it figured out, we'll do this live another time. It just wasn't working for me today. And so
thank you so much for this, Candace. And thank you to everybody for listening. It's lots of love to you all, huh?
Thank you so much. Yeah. And for those of you who are contacting me about your artwork, it's wonderful. Keep on chatting about that. I love it. And David, you hold on. Don't click all the way off. I'm just going to stop the recording because you and I have a couple things to talk about. And for the rest of you, see you next time. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye-bye. And
see, give me a close-up of that, because that's a really lovely painting, Candace. I think that's beautiful.
Sure. Hold on. Yeah, it's just still. Why are you? The computer is just